So to know the history of interference, see, first thing, it was done in 1801 by Thomas Young. So Thomas Young experimentally demonstrated that light can undergo interference. See, before that, Newton's corpuscular theory could explain everything. But this particular experiment, it was a huge blow to the Newton's corpuscular theory. Because Newton could not explain, or the corpuscular theory could not explain how light can behave like a wave. Alright. So what exactly he did was, so he had a source, and then he had two slits, basically something like this. Okay. And then a screen was placed. Now in the screen, he could actually make out dark and bright patches. So what he called it as fringes. Okay. And he also told one more thing, that always the center part is always the bright fringe. Okay, why it will be bright fringe and all those things, you guys will learn in the later part. But what we are actually doing here is we are just looking at the Young's double slit experiment. Okay. Now certain experimental observations are very much important here. Okay. So first experimental observation was, if one of the slits were closed, then there was no interference pattern. Okay, only if both the slits were open, only then interference used to come. Now by this, it was very clear that light was behaving like a wave, because if only two waves are coming, only then superposition can happen. So if one of the slits were closed, then there was no interference, that there were no fringes. So by this, it was very clear that light was behaving like a wave. Okay, this is one of the experimental observations. The second experimental observation was when two independent sources of light was kept, rather than two slits which were illuminated by the same source. What he did was, he kept two independent sources of light. Then interference was there, but it was not stable, or you can say it was not a sustainable interference. It was coming and going. Okay, so this is the reason he took one source and two slits. Alright, so it was not because of the slits, it was because of the source which was before the slit. This was another experimental observation. Then the third experimental observation was, whenever he gave different colored lights, then the fringes width used to change. Okay, like it was a red light, then the fringe width was different. If it was blue light, then the fringe width was different. So he came across different formulas, he came across different observations saying that how the width of the fringe is dependent on the wavelength. Okay, so these were all experimental observations which was done by Thomas Young when he did the interference experiment. Now, one very important point which we have to notice is why he took one source and two slits rather than taking two sources. Like, why was the interference not stable? Like, why was it not sustainable? All those questions you guys will get to know the answer in the next video.